Hello and welcome to my latest vlog hop for crafting together with all brands. This month we have a bit of a colour challenge going on, so we've taken May and we split it down into 3 colours. So each colour must start with a letter from May. So for example we could have maroon, auburn and oh, that's bad. My brain's just gone blank for colours that start with Y that isn't yellow. You'll see why in a minute. So, what I've gone for is mauve, yellow, and aquamarine. And I've gone to my stash and tried to find products that will fit with those colours. So I don't have any set idea at this moment what I'm going to do. So I have a pattern pad, pens in case we need to do any colouring or detailing, ink pads for the possibility of either stamping or blending. I have got some stencils to hand as well, just in case. I've pulled out some coloured card that coordinates with all the supplies, and I have my white card bases. So if you want to gather your supplies, then we can get started. So what I've done is I have pulled out one sheet of each design from my paper pad. Now the pad I'm working with is Paper Boutique's Spring Celebration, so you should still be able to get hold of this one. And if so, I'll pop a link in the comments. This won't be an affiliate link, just so that you are aware. Okay, so with our papers, we've kind of got a few different elements in one pad. We have our patterned papers, if we look at this first set of 3, that we can use as either a backdrop or we can use that as a feature of our card design. We have this stitched effect design, which is definitely going to be more of a background texture. We have some sentiments that we can cut out in coordinating colours, always useful. And we have these topper designs as well. So if you don't feel like stamping and colouring, you can use one of these topper designs to actually help you to craft. So I'm probably going to be doing a mix of working with the toppers, working with stamps. So let's get started before the voice gives out. Oh dear. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a square card base. To that I'm going to apply some of our stitched paper, and also we're going to be using this topper here. Now I am going to be doing a little bit of work with this topper, so it's not going to be as straightforward as just sticking a topper on, but I'll talk you through what I do after I've done it. So let's first of all cut our toppers up so that we have our individual pieces. So to do this, I'm going to be using my trusty trimmer, and I'm just going to line up so that the join between the toppers are in the centre of the cut line. It's slightly easier to do this with this kind of trimmer as opposed to doing it with the guillotine. Any rough edges you can always just tidy those up after. There we go. Let's just tweak that just a little bit. There we go. So you should have something that looks like this. Okay. Sun's going to come out now, so I'm going to have to tweak my camera a bit. But when I come back, you're going to find that I've done a little something special to this little topper, and I'll talk you through what I did. Okay, so let's talk you through what I've done with the topper. So I'm going to also talk a bit about what to do if it goes wrong. So I have one that's gone wrong. Okay, so if you have a ScanNCut, a little bit of a challenge for you. So I've got a topper where we've got a fairly plain background, so we should have a reasonably easy time of it. But what you have to look at is the contrast between your icon that you want to cut out and the background. So if you aren't picking up your focal element, you're going to want to just line with a complementary pen around those areas that you might struggle with. So for instance, his belly here, the contrast is a bit low even on colour setting. So I scanned it using ScanNCut data, and the reason I did that is because I wanted to be able to weld and edit my shape. So with ScanNCut data on colour and you've outlined your shape, you should be able to get a reasonably good cut. Now this is done on the CM, so if you do it on the SDX it'd be even better and even more controllable for you. Now then what you do is you go home to reset, re-import in your scanned cut line that you've probably saved on your machine or on your USB memory stick. We're going to lay a circle over the top, use background scan just to check all our alignment, and then you want to weld together the circle and your ScanNCut data shape so that we create a panel like this. Now, if that all sounded like a bunch of gobbledygook to you and you have a ScanNCut, there is going to be a book coming out that's going to talk about these techniques in much more depth and take you through step by step. So, what I would say is if you end up with this happening and it's just taken a bit too much away at the top here, then don't panic. Cut another topper and you'll still be able to use that for what we're going to do next. Now, if you have any of these little taggy bits that is just missed, then what you're going to want to do is just tidy those up. So, I'll be back in a sec. So, I've tidied up just those couple of tags and places over my top. Now, we have choices, because what we can do is put this on a contrasting piece of card, so that could be a white piece of card or a different tone piece of card, and actually create a border around. Now, this is entirely up to you. You don't have to, but what I would do is 3D mount this up. So we can do that with some foam pads, or if you have some foam adhesive sheet, you can use that too. So let's see what I've got in my stash. Okay, so we have a few different types of foam adhesive that we can look at. So first of all is some foam squares. Now these are quite low profile ones. Okay. At the other end of the extreme, we have super duper thick foam tape. And somewhere in the middle, I have some black. Now, because we're working with light coloured papers, we want to use our light coloured pads. So I'm just going to use some of these. Now, as I was saying, if you want to create a border, what you can do is just mount this onto your light coloured card with a little bit double-sided or some wet glue, the choice is yours. Then put that back through your ScanNCut. and add on the offset. So that would be direct cutting rather than ScanNCut data like we did with the topper. Okay, that one was a little bit off, but it'll do. And always remember to just pop a few tabs in the middle. Now before peeling off your backing, you're going to want to just flip it over, and especially given that this is paper, I want to just check that there's no areas that are sinking when we apply a light pressure. Okay, anything that you're not sure about, we're going to pop in another tap, just because we don't want this collapsing. Okay, I might just pop a couple here and here as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is peel off all these backings, and when we come back we should have this stuck. And there we go, there's our piece assembled. Now if you've done the offset there, then you're going to have a nice border around, but this is more of an eclipse style card, so we've just got that nice subtle lift effect to it. Now, I did say that I was going to apply some stitch paper. Oh, left my card out as well. There we go. So let's trim that up. So, if ever you can't remember what size your card blank is, we can pop that against a ruler and just measure that up. Or we can use our trimmer. So we're looking just shy of 15 centimetre square, so 14.9. So if we trim our papers to 14.9, then we should be good to go. Now, if your trimmer doesn't have a nice long ruler, then what we can do is we can actually mark it on the back just to give us a little bit of a guide to work to. So we want to do this almost on the edge of our paper, so that it can be nice and accurate. Just going to pull that through, and I'm going to use, let's go for the blue. Let's just try that 15. Now if you need to trim it, you always can do that. We want to check that it's the same on both edges, which it's not. So on this other edge we're going to mark it at 15. So I want to do it from this edge here. And I apologise if you can't quite see this, just because I want to make sure that I get close to that edge there. Okay. So now that we have our marks, we can use our trimmer to line up with those and get that cut perfectly. Now if your trimmer suffers with burring the edges of your paper and you haven't got a spare blade, here's a little bit of a tip for you. Allow an extra millimetre when you're cutting from the back, flip it over and just trim it from the front. But mine's okay, so we should be good to go. Okay, now the other thing to point out is, as we have got that slight variation in size, you're going to want to make sure that you get your card and your paper the right way round. So let's check, that looks pretty good. I'm going to flip that way, and just to get this sorted, I'm going to use some double-sided if it doesn't kick me. just go a little bit careful when you're applying your double-sided tape that you aren't stretching your paper by accident. So okay, with that done, double check again. Double and triple check, and it saves mistakes and tears after. So I'm just gonna put these corners. Now that one's going to be awkward, so I'm going to do opposite corners. Sometimes if it'll behave you can do one on each, but if your tape's been hanging around a little bit, that first piece can sometimes be a bit of a pain. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to flip that back over so that we know that we're in the right place. Line it up on the corner that doesn't have the tape pulled back. And then we can press down those opposite corners and everything should be hunky-dory. So okay. There we go. And we're ready for our topper. So again, if you want to, you can raise this up. And I think just to bring in some of that lemon so it doesn't look totally out of place, let's have a look at bringing this in here. Now my corners are a bit bosh on this piece, so I will trim it up a bit neater. But I think that would be a nice touch. Start to bring out some of the colours in our actual bird so it pops a bit more. So if we look at it without, it tends to get a little bit lost. So let's get our trimmer and we'll tidy up these corners before we try and measure. So just going to take a sliver off. And that's just going to neaten that up so that we can work on that corner. Okay, so I'm going to take my lemon pen and I'm just going to mark roughly where I want to trim. Okay, so let's get this into our ruler so we can measure that before we go too much further. Okay, so up against the guide, and that is coming out at about 11.5. Okay, so let's tidy that up a bit and get it right. So I'm just going to put a mark at 11.5 this way. Okay, and we want 11.5 from this edge as well. So again, we can go with our lemon marker, and hopefully then we have a square. As always, measure twice, cut once and all that. But for now, let's slide this up here. I'm only going to cut so far because I know that I'm going to turn this around and cut it at the other mark, and it saves wasting too much of our card. Okay, and there we go. So now we have our mount, and you want to check that you're happy with that. Place that on the card and check you're happy with the colours, and I think that's looking quite pretty. So let's first of all check, and I always do this when I'm sticking a topper on a card, check which way your card's folded, because as you move stuff on your desk, invariably that will change, and the numbers of times that, you know, we end up doing a card that's suitable for Australia, if you know what I mean, then, you know, you always want to make sure that you try and avoid doing that. Okay. And we can do the same technique again, so peel back a corner and then the opposite corner. Like so. Get your card. Well, no, get that card first. Oh, that was near. That wasn't near miss, wasn't that? Oh dear. Now, I want to get this centered. So remember, use the corners that aren't peeled back till you're happy with your positioning. If it helps, stand up so that you can actually see straight down onto your card. There we go. Peel those away. Then we can repeat again with the next layer. I keep a recycling bin down to my side so I can just pop all these bits of tape backing straight in the recycling. Okay, so otherwise we'd be inundated with backing paper. Okay. There we go. I'm just going to go for it. Now, if you think that you can't get this straight, do yourself a favour and don't try to. Make it purposely angled. So I'm going to just apply a twist to this, like so. And maybe put it over to one side a bit. Like that. Okay. Now, that means because we've kind of offset that, let's have a look at our sentiments and see which is going to go. Now, there isn't a lemon one in this sentiment strip, but that's because lemon as a rule won't work well with a white sentiment. So you want to go for something that is going to stand out. So we could go just for you on your special day. So let's go on your special day. Now, I could use a trimmer just to make sure I get this straight, but You can also use your ScanNCut, but it takes a little bit more work to get it to do it successfully, because it will see each of those letters as an individual shape, and what you want it to do is see the sentiment as a whole. Okay. And there we go. Now with your sentiment, if you want to, you can mount it up on some of that same lemon, especially if you're going to 3D mount this so that it sticks above that initial layer. So let's get some double-sided tape. Okay. Onto your card so that you've got that offset. Press that down. Then we can use our trimmer to cut that out. And there we go. So first one way. Now, when we come to try and do this angle here, if we try and do it like this, we're going to really struggle. So I'm going to turn it round, even though it looks a bit counterintuitive. Put my blade up to the top. Eyeball it again. And take it past that cut, and we have our sentiment. So again, if your trimmer leaves any fuzzies, just tidy those up with your scissors. It's the little touches like that that are just going to help your card look that little bit more professional. Okay. And then we have our sentiment ready to go. And I'm going to pop that about there. Now, I want this to sit higher than my actual 3D mounted bit. So what I'm going to do is actually double up on this end here. So when we flip that over, remember that's the right hand edge, and we're looking up to about there. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually double these up then apply them, but like so. There we go. These tend to just ping their backings off anyway, so they're not that difficult to work with in that sense. Okay, so let's take those off there. And the other way that I could do it, as they've actually come off in two for once, is to just apply them back to back and ping them across the side of the room. I will find that later. So yeah, still settling in with the new studio setup. So still not at the point where we can fully go live yet, just because of finding where things are at the moment. And there's a a couple more bits I want to get for the craft room. And then I think we'll be done. I'm not allowed to buy anything for like the rest of, well, at the rate I'm going, probably the rest of my days. I've got that much. Okay, so on this end I've just done the single because that's going to be overlapping on top of it here. So let's get this in the right place. I want to make sure that we're level, so let's put our card level in the first place, and that's going to help us. So I'm just going to slide that up to when it kind of stops, and then we can level that up there. Move your hand away, needs to nudge down just a touch there, and I think that looks pretty close. Maybe up just a touch there. And we have card number 1. Now let's go back to our colour challenge and consider our next design. So we've done our pattern paper version, and I'm thinking next I'm going to do a little bit of inking with some stencils, and then we can reintroduce those pattern papers back into that. So be back in a moment, ready for card 2. Okay, so for this next design I'm going to get inky. I've pulled out some stencils, some inks that I introduced at the start of the video, some pens again, just pull those out at the start of the video, and our blending brushes. Okay, so I'm just going to pop these inks to the top. Set the pens to one side for now, and let's have a look at the stencils. So I've pulled out a few different ones. So I've pulled out some that are going to help me with the layout, and some that are going to help me with the detailing. So we can set the detailing stencils to one side for now, and let's just have a look at the stencils. So in terms of card, I have a slimline left to do, which might work well with this design here, so I'll pop that with that one. Okay, and then the others are all square, but I have different sizes. So I have a nice big 6x6 looks like, some 5x5s, and some 4x4s. So the 4x4 just about fits our smallest stencil here. And that one will fit onto that card or that card. So what I'm going to do is actually pop my stencil over the top and see which one I prefer. You know, I might do like a cutaway section with this card, which I think could look quite nice. So let's pop these to one side, and I'm going to start off with this one. Okay, so I'm going to line that up, and I did pull out some masking tape earlier. That would be handy for this. Okay, there we go. Don't need a lot, so one of these little rolls is perfectly fine. Just going to line that up, and we can create kind of a hinge. So I'm going to do 2 pieces that go across, And like I said, I'm probably going to end up cutting this bit away. Let's just remove the extra card from underneath there, so I don't think that I'm level if I'm not. Okay. Now, because this is quite close to this edge here, I am going to put a little bit of masking tape just to extend that stencil. Split that just because I missed that bit of an edge there. And that bit just there. And then I'm going to do another line. Like this. Oop. So I'm just making sure that my tape slightly overlaps. Number one, it's going to make it easier to pull it off in a bit. And we're going to make sure that we're not letting any of that ink through. So, why am I inking through this stencil for this first bit? And what I'm thinking is I'm going to kind of set myself up with a little guide here as to where I want to build my design. And we can do that really quickly just by inking through a stencil, even though we're probably going to build up our layers as the stencil is. It's going to start off by helping us place that first outline. Okay. Now, this is just joined at the top and the bottom, so if you wanted to take that out, you could do. But I'm going to leave mine in the stencil. Let's get a brush. Now, I don't want to go with my darkest colour. I'm going to go for, let's go for the blue, because our previous card was very much focusing on the kind of purpley mauvey tones. Now I'm going to go to the blue, and you want a blue blending brush. There we go. Now I'm using Salvage Patina, and we can build it up bit by bit. Now I do think my ink pad is in need of re-inking, but it will do for now. Now, you may have more than one layer of this showing. You may have just the outside layer showing. Or you might even do like a reverse and have your outer frame kind of leading back to your card blank in the middle. So try and think about this as you're doing this blending. Which way do you want to be going? Because if you want your outside line to show, then that's where you can spend the majority of your time inking. Now remember, we created that hinge. Let's lift up and see how we're looking. Carefully remove any little dust bunnies you may get off your brush. There we go. A little bit more just on that corner there, I think should do it. Okay. Flick that back. Now at this point you want to make sure that you are 100% happy with this stenciling before we remove this, otherwise it's going to be quite tricky to try and line it back up. Okay, so let's gently peel this away. If you peel back on yourself, you should remove without damaging your card front. There we go. I'm just going to set that tape off to one side because we might need it again in a bit. let's get our stencil and we can start to build up our layers. So we can either use our colour card, we could use our paper. So I'm going to start off by working onto this nice sort of mauvey coloured layer, and this is going to give us a little bit of a border. So if I flip this over and work on the back, first of all, is your paper directional? Because if so, you want to make sure that it's up the right way for your stencil. I'm going to line this up again, stick it down. Don't need as much stick this time, but we are going to be drawing. So take either your lemon or your light blue pen. Now we want to miss our outside layer, but we want the lilac to show in this next layer here. So all I'm going to do is just trace around our stencil. And then by the magic of editing, I will have cut this out. Now, if you try to do this with ScanNCut, just note that because you have the gaps in the lines, you will need to bridge those gaps before you actually try and cut it. We're going to peel that stencil back and then we can cut away. Okay. Okay, so I've cut out my piece and I've just burnished around the edges very lightly with bone folder, just because when we're cutting these little internal corners here, sometimes you can find that the paper starts to catch a little bit on your scissors. So if we just go around really carefully with the tip of our bone folder, we can just burnish those edges down. It also gives you the opportunity to see if there's anywhere that you just need to tweak. So I'm just going to very gently tweak this one bit corner here. It just needs to get a little bit deeper into that cut, and again we'll smooth it out like so. Okay, now we can bring in our card and we can line that up with our stenciling. Okay, I'm quite liking how this is looking now. So we can continue to build up our layer. So this first one I'm going to keep kind of flat. And we'll go. So this particular stencil is by M.A.Y. I've got to get back into the habit going, and this is this product. It's been a while, so I do apologise for our extended absence. We did think that we'd be kind of back on normal filming by now, but we'll get there. Okay, again, make sure upright way. Pop it onto our stenciling like so. Press that down. So far so good. I'm liking the look. So if we go from pattern paper to another pattern paper, it can jar a little bit. So to create a bit of distance, and also to make sure we're keeping on to the aqua theme, I'm going to use some of our blue so that we can then have it going. So it's going to go soft to our lilac to our blue. And I really should call these by the colours of the colour challenge, but hey hey. So let's bring in our stencil again, and again I'm going to work from the back. So this is a texture card, so we're still going to want to, so our previous line, if I take my slightly darker blue pen this time, was going round this one here. Now we've got choices. We can go to this line in here and have quite a thin amount of that lilac. We can go to the next line inside of that to have a wider border of that lilac. So I think on this occasion, let's go for the, just trying to picture it as well. So I'm going to go for this line here, I think, and then the next one will go inside of that. And yes, I could have moved this up to the corner so it didn't waste so much card. But what I might do actually is join these dots, and let's see if we can get the ScanNCut to cut it out for me, and then I can use the rest as a frame for something else. So just going to join these up. Now again, because we've drawn on the back of our card, the ScanNCut is going to be cutting from the back. So you will need to do that burnishing step with that as well. Okay, so I've cut out my little panel. I've burnished around the edges. Let's have a look at how that's fitting on our card. So this layer I'm going to 3D mount up like so. And I think that's looking pretty good. Now before I do that, we want to create our final piece to go on here. So let's bring in our paper. And we could go to the sort of movie pink to pull that out of there. Or we can go to the mint. Now, I think because we're going to wanting to put a sentiment on the top of this, I'm going to go with the mint. Okay. So, another top tip for you. You want to keep everything level, but you don't want to waste too much. So first of all, let's get our paper up the right way. So that's directional that way. Flip it over. I'm going to work onto this edge here, and I'm going to use this bottom line just to help me mark where that's going. Now, do it the right way up, even better. There we go. Just because I want that sticky to go down there onto my desk. And let's use the blue. Yeah, okay, we still get a little bit of wasted space at the top and bottom, but we can work with that. Now, for those of you with ScanNCut, what I did with that last piece was I did a direct cut using black and white. It actually would not pick it up with a colour. So, as you can probably tell at the moment, the CM, because it's that little bit smaller, is actually a better machine for my desk at the moment. So it tends to get used a little bit more than it normally would. Okay. So I'm going to set that to one side because we're going to want to use that in a minute for our cutaway panel. follow this round. Yes, I could have got the ScanNCut to do it, but when it's something so small, it hardly seems worth it. Although I kind of get halfway through and then think, wish I had. Because this is quite intricate and these aren't the best scissors for intricate. But that's the trouble, isn't it? You move everything around in your craft room and then you can't find anything. It's like all my tools have just vanished. I mean, we're convinced that it's the house owls. Or the fairies at the bottom of the garden. There we go. So, we have our panel. And again, we can do the same here. So I'm just going to smooth that round. In the process, we can kind of see if there's anything that just needs a little bit of tweaking in how we've cut. It's not looking too bad. So I'm going to stick this onto my panel like so. Good old double-sided. Now there are actually some shapes like this on the ScanNCut if you don't have the stencil. So you can create something similar, especially on the STX when you have that offset feature. It's the thing with writing the ScanNCut book at the moment. It's all about using it without a computer, and you'd be amazed how many things you want to use offset for. And when you can't, because most CMs don't have it, isn't half limiting. But that said, if you can only afford a CM, there's workarounds. There we go. So we have our panel. Now if you want to add a little extra like shadowing, then you can trace around the outside with a darker pen just to help that pop a little bit. Really is up to you. And if you're going to do that, we can actually use our stencil to kind of help us a little bit. Just so that we don't there we go. Follow it round. Doing this on texture paper is always interesting because it does make your pen bounce. And here is that happening. So let's just go around here. There we go. Just because it moved, it's easier to just like I said, if you stencil mode, it's not very easy to realign it exactly. So you're almost better off eyeballing it. There we go. And let's get my cap. I'm terrible for losing caps on pens. So now we can pop our panel there. That is looking really nice and I really like that. Let's see if we 3D it up, does it help that read a bit better? Yes, it does. So we can do that now. So we can use our 3D foam pads. To help boost that up. If you want more dimension, you can use the thicker foam tape. But something like this. Don't want it huge. For starters, you have the postage issue. Okay, and get another set. I'm going to put one just there. And I always tend to twist the ones that I put into a point, so it kind of gives it the most support it can. And then one in the middle. Again, do that little push test. As I said, these kind of like to shed the backing anyway, so it's not that tricky to do these at speed. It's not like the foam tape where you're like trying to chase the backing for hours on end. Okay, there we go. And we're going to go into the centre. So just take your time. You want to align point to point, valley to valley, and then you should get it spot on. Now if you lightly tack it, you should be able to lift up and just double check that all those points line up. I think just there. Maybe tweak and more tweak. There we go. And that'll do. So we've got our frame. And we can take the last stencil off now and move that to one side. Now, we had our sentiment paper, and we can pick another one of these. So we can go to the kind of TV blue side of things and keep it within those blues. We can go more to the mauvey purpley lilac-y side. So I can't think of anybody whose anniversary I have coming up. So can always do a belated happy birthday. And again, if you want to apply a matte layer to this, you can do. Okay, there we go. But I think because it's such a contrast, we don't actually need to. Now, just because this is overlapping this outer frame a little, I am going to just take it a little bit off this width. So, because it's so small, a trimmer like this probably isn't going to be your best bet. You're going to be better with something that is going to more nibble. Yep, that's a technical term, nibbling. So let's get our guillotine. Number one, we can check that our straight edge is actually straight. Not too bad. And then I always prefer with my guillotine, because it's got this lip at the bottom here, to line up on that bottom edge, because as your guillotine comes down, it's going to naturally want to drag your paper this way. So if you've got that stop there, then you know you're going to keep it square. And I'm going to do this a little bit at a time. As I said, nibbling. Okay, and I want to match this amount as closely as I can. Okay, now to save getting confused, I'm going to clear those away in case I nibble again. Otherwise you could be lining that up to the wrong piece. So, bring my card back in and let's test that out. How's it looking? that's not looking too bad. I think I'm going to take just a fraction more off. So about half what I did last time. Check it by eye. Maybe a little bit more of that end. But yeah, this trim is really good for when we want to do those little fine adjustments, which you just can't do with the other kind of paper trimmer. Okay. So let's bring that back in. Test it out. Now before I stick this down, what I am going to do is do our cutaway panel. So we don't want to risk damaging these corners, so set that to one side. And we can either do this with a guillotine or a paper trimmer. The choice is yours. I'm going to go to the guillotine, as I said, because it's going to hold it a bit more square. I'm going to slide that along, so I want a good kind of inch and a bit. Technical measurement this. Inch and a bit. Okay. So we now have this cutaway section here. I'm going to bring in my paper and my bit of card I've just cut off. I'm going to line my bit of card up to the edge of my pattern paper, like so. And if it's slightly larger, it doesn't matter because it's going to sit underneath that front flap. If it's too short, however, that's when you're going to see that something is not right. So I'm going to do the same with the height. And again, if it's too big, we can always just trim it. But too small, and we can't. So I'm just going to move that bit of white card out of the way because I want to make sure this is square. There we go. And we have our piece of paper. So that's going to go on there. And we can do a little bit of an edging strip if we want to. So I'm actually going to make my life a little bit easier for this next step. I'm going to apply the tape to my card blank. Now generally as a rule with adhesive, it's actually easier to apply your adhesive to your thicker surface if you can. So in this case, where we know it wants to line up to that edge, we can do that. And again, even if you find that it's a little bit short, what you can do is just cut a little contrasting strip just to edge this. Okay, so I'm going to press that first piece down first so that we know that that is right. Then we can open our card and we can peel away the backing off our other piece, like so. Nice and neat. Now we can trim up any excess. So to do that, I'm going to work to the actual back of the card rather than the front of the card. And we can just use scissors, or if you want to use your paper trimmer, you can. The trouble generally using paper trimmer or guillotine for this step is usually the width of your trimmer isn't quite wide enough to do this out flat. So kind of just butt the edges up against your card and you should be good to go. There we go. So check everything's pressed down nicely. And we can pop our little sentiment on like so. And I'm going to go again. It extends past the edge of my panel so I can put my tape on my panel rather than trying to work out where the tape needs to end on here when it overhangs. We can position that. Try and get it level after we've gone to all that hard work of levelling up our layers. And again, we can use our overhead view to kind of help us there. It's a bit difficult if you have the light to the left of you or to the right. So don't be afraid to pick it up and just twist it around and just make absolutely sure that you are happy with that position and then pop it down. There we go. Our next card. Okay, so next we're going to go to our slimline card, and I'm using the offcut from the last card to actually create a centre panel. Waste not. And I'm going to line that up with my stencil, and let's push that stencil up to kind of above our centre line so that we know it is going to be a vertical slimline. And I'm going to just put some tape here. Now we are going to want to use quite a bit of tape because I just want this centre panel. So I'm going to pop a little bit there. There we go. And we can pop that bit there. And it's kind of a case of filling the blanks. Okay, so you should have something that looks like that. Now, if you think that you need more masking, then mask this area here and here. But for the size brushes I have, I should be okay at that. And you want to make sure that it's pressed down well to your card blank, because that's also going to stop your stencil from moving. If you're working onto a sticky mat, then press your stencil down well to that and just concentrate on the masking element. Okay. So this time I'm going to go to Victorian Velvet and a little bit Dusty Concord. So I'm actually going to start with my Distress ink because I never want to contaminate my oxide brushes or my ink pad with oxide, if you see what I mean. So I try and keep them separate. I'm using really light taps. I don't want to pick up tons of colour, but I'm going to build it up slowly. then when we come to do our oxide, we can be a little bit more heavy-handed with that because it's a lighter colour anyway. Dusty Concord can be really deep purple if you want it to be, but I just want to kind of have it so that it's shadowing the Victorian velvet. Okay, let's get my Victorian velvet brush. I do try and keep so that my oxide brushes have a colour family, because trying to wash the oxide out of brushes is a nightmare. I've yet to find a good way of doing it. Okay, so again, I'm going to start off by gently tapping. That's going to start by to blend all of our colours together, because basically where your dye ink goes onto your stencil, it's going to stay wet. So we've done our blending, now we can go and be a bit more heavy-handed. That's going to be another re-ink due soon. There we go. And we're building up that depth of colour. Now bear in mind that because this is a stencil, we're going to have these areas here that are masked currently. Now what you can do is move your stencil up so that you can just get to those areas, but obviously because we've used like 2 colours and lots of layers, it's going to be really difficult to blend those together. So I personally would not worry and let that be a feature of the design instead. Okay, one panel done. We're going to gently release that from our stencil, like so, so that we can see our design. Now, remember how I had this stencil that was for details? I thought it'd be quite cool to kind of do some leaf details from our frame. So if we do this one here, would look quite nice. But again, we can use our masking tape to mask, as well as to stick our stencil to our card. So let's start off with the easy one to mask. I'm just going to pop that down there. Now there is a tiny bit of a hole there, so I'm actually going to fill that in. Because there's nothing more annoying than that little speck of stenciling. Okay. Now, as you can see with this one, our masking isn't going to be able to hold our stencil. So I'm going to use a little bit of tape over my inking. Now, just to detack that slightly, I'm going to pop that on my trouser leg. And hopefully that should be okay. Now we can go in with those same colours or change colour now. I'm going to go for the same colour because I've still got a little bit of my frame showing through the bottom here. So let's see what's left on my Dusty Concord brush. We've got a little bit there. And I can go over with the Victorian velvet. Okay, it's going to need a little bit more to that bottom edge. There we go. And we can use that bottom piece of tape as a hinge just to check. So we can see there we've got a little bit of an overlap. Yep, I'm liking that. And For this bottom section, we have a decision to make. If you're doing the card landscape, you might want to turn this round and use this longer section this direction, because basically then you would have it so that it was coming even out of the frame. Oh, excuse me. But this time, if we use our shorter one, we're going to just have a leaf coming into contact with our frame. I want it to look like it's actually kind of joined on. So let's take that masking tape out of the way. Like so. And we can pick which bit of our stencil we want to use. And I'm going to go there. I'm going to put my masking at the top there for a second. Let's peel this bit here because we're going to need this bit masked. Now what I would say is, normally if you're not filming this, just clean the stencil off between these sections, just because it will help the masking tape stay stuck to your stencil. Okay, so we have that kind of in the middle, and we can go again. So okay, need some more ink on that. Get my dusty Concord, tap tap tap, there we go. Victorian velvet. So your oxides are actually pretty opaque. I'm going to give you nice even coverage as well. There we go. And hopefully when we peel that away, you should have something that looks like that. Ta-da! Okay, so we've got our panel. And if you've inked up your desk, you can clean that up with just a wet wipe once you've finished. Otherwise we're going to get very soggy. So, slimline card. We have our panel. Now we need to work out what we're doing behind it. So, I'm actually going to kind of mimic this shape here through my background. So, let's take the masking tape off. And I'll get that all lined up. So what I've done is I've just basically done a very rough layout over my slimline card. So my slimline card's sitting just here and just here. And I'm just looking at how the layers are going to interact. So again, I'll probably put this up above middle, but I'm more looking at the size of the actual panel that I want to create. Now if I go to this inside line here, then that is going to look a little bit odd because we're going to get this funny little shape in here. So in that case you're actually better off going up a size or down a size. So it really is up to you. I'm going to go up a size and use that bigger outside line. So let's move this down to the bottom corner. Then I can use some more tape just to place that straight while I do some drawing round. Like so. Now I have done this directionally as well. So otherwise I would have rotated it around to get the most out of my paper, but because the paper's directional, that's not an option. Okay. Now this is going to be tricky because obviously you've only got this fine line to work with. So I am going to have to struggle a little bit. So let me go away for a second, and when I come back I'll have the frame cut. Okay, so I've cut out my piece. My panel is going to go on top, probably something like that. Now, if I can find my corner rounder, I'll round the corners on this piece, just because there's a few little dings and things. So what I am going to do actually is I can use my stencil to kind of fake it. So let's go to a nice rounded corner. Again, I'm working on the back with light coloured pen. And I'm just going to mark that up. Do the same here. Rounded corner. There we go. And there we go. So we've got a guide for cutting, and then we can just snip that, and at the very least it will match the corners of our stencil template. And last one. There we go. So we have a layer like so. And then it's just if you want to pop in another layer underneath. Now before I do that, if ever you're not sure if you should, let me just tweak that camera. There we go. Just because the light is changing as we go through the time that I'm recording, it just helps you see a little bit better. It's glaring a bit, and I want you to see my layers. As I was saying, so you might decide that you want to do another panel underneath. Now, you don't have to keep those concentric. You can actually twist those round if you want. So this sort of little tier here would actually be quite good as like a panel to push that up a little bit. Decisions. Once you get past a certain point, there isn't really any point in cutting that rounded detail either. So for instance, if you're doing this line here, that won't be any point. Even this line here won't be any point. Anyway, I did say I was going to cut sentiment first, just so that we're kind of keeping that in mind. Now, I do want this to be more on the mauvey pinky side, so let's use the mauvey sentiment. So we can cut that out. Okay. So we have the blue, someone special, or we have the pink, congratulations. Now, remember how I said if you are working over the top and your two colours are similar to create a contrast, that's going to need a little bit of contrast. Not a huge amount, but a little bit. So we could just pop it and do a straight little panel, but I think if we bring in our stencil here, we can actually kind of judge where we want to. Actually, should we do something a bit fun? Let's flip this over and line that up roughly about middle. Now if this works, it's great. If it doesn't work, don't panic. I'm actually going to go to my pink. These pens are fab, by the way. They're by Brunswick, and they're brilliant for like journaling and stuff, because the one thing I have found is all my planner stuff. So no excuses for not being planned, just can't find anything else. And yes, I have planned my layout as well. Okay, so let's get my scissors and let's see how this works. I'm going to cut just a little bit, do our straight lines first. Straight lines are easy. And this end. And onto this end. Okay. Then I can work from this centre point and go down the curve here. Nice and easy. Now this bit here is a little bit more tricky, so I'm going to take a sliver up. Just helps get onto our cutting line, and then we can just tweak that last little bit in a minute when we cut this off. So where we've got this bit here, move your fingers away as much as you can, trim that way and that way, and we should have a nice curve. Okay, if you need to tweak this bit here, for example, we can do that. Just going to nibble at it until it's almost right. These tiny amounts that we're taking off. Okay, so let's do the same here. Round we go. Into the corner. There we go. And then we can go round and follow that curve. There we go. So we now have our little sentiment strip with the same profile. So if we were doing this landscape card, we would do it this way, and then that would sit in the middle like so. But we're not. We're doing this portrait, so we want this to go across here. So we don't want to cover up too much of our lovely stencil detail. So I'm actually going to stick down my sentiment first, and you're going to want to do that with a fair bit of room around it. $3D'ing it up for this layout is not an option. So I'm going to move that there. Get it level on the paper, so you can use the pattern on your paper to help you. Press that down. Okay. So we've got a level on a paper. Let's get our stencil and line that up as close as possible. Now, because I'm going to be working from the front, you want to be using a pen that is either really light or that matches. So I'm going to go for my light blue. Okay. Now this may be a bit tricky for you to see on screen. I will try and hold it up so you can see. Okay? Hopefully you can see that. I'm going to trim that out very carefully. Now, your ScanNCut is stand a chance of seeing this line. So unfortunately, even if you've cut everything else on the ScanNCut at this point, you're going to have to break out the scissors for this point. Now, don't worry about the rounded corners at this point. I'm just going to follow those basic lines because we can do the corner rounding from the back. However, if you can see your corners nice and clearly, then go for it. Okay. So, we should have something that looks like that so far. And stencil, let's have a look and see how that's fitting at the moment. Okay, not too bad. But it's not really going to help us round our corners. Nah. I'm just going to do this by eye then. Okay. Just because some of the corners you need to round a bit more because you can see ink and stuff. I'll make it a bit more pronounced. There we go. Round that way. Ooh. Clean that up there. There we go. And you should have something that looks like this. Now we have our panel, our sentiment, and we can kind of do a little bit of fussy cutting just to give us a few flowers and things. So I'm just going to chop off a little bit of pattern paper, and is this going to be the world's best fussy cutting? No, it's not. Does it need to be? No. Okay. I'm going to use the shorter pieces from around the edges towards the front of my little collection. And you don't have to do this top and bottom when you're working vertically. If you're going horizontally, try and do this evenly, but okay. This is going to be a little bit fiddly, so what I tend to do is just kind of rock the piece between my fingers. Oh, try not to drop it. And round we go around the big bit of the flower. Rotate the piece rather than use scissors, and let's just, there we go, and we can tidy up as we need to. Okay, so there's that bit. Just want a couple bits more with longer stems. That'll be done. So rather than sitting and watching me fuzzy cut out, let's pause it there. So what I've done is I've very quickly done some fuzzy cutting of 3 of each flower, and then I've cut out a few of the little foliage bits as well, and just so that we can start to use those if we need to kind of build our design. So we can set that to one side and let's start assembling our card, because it's going to be easy to put those in situ once everything is kind of stuck in place. So I'm going to start off with my big piece here, and let's very quickly pop some tape. Now you're not recording at home, so you can put as much tape on as you want. I'm not going to tuck anything down the sides, so we can stick down the sides, and that'll do. Okay. So, if you'd like to know what happens to the cards after I make them on videos and things, if it's something that I think is sellable, I'll pair it up with a envelope if it's a card, or package it up if it's like a gift bag or a gift box. And I actually donate to the little shop at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham, so you can find them in there. So pop that slightly above centre and try and get it level. Okay, now for this next bit I actually think 3Ding it up might be a good idea. It's a shame I haven't got any white normal foam tape at the moment, because that would be a quicker way of doing this particular piece. But it's fine. It gets them used up, doesn't it? These things don't stay sticky forever. So, I tend to do like a hopscotch pattern. Okay, if you end up with a bit of a gap, let's do one there, one there. Again, do the tap test, all okay. Now, the other thing to bear in mind when we're doing this is, do we want to actually ink around the edges at all of our piece? Now, I'm just going to do very light brushing. I'm not even trying to get every single bit. It's just giving a hint of a colour. There we go. all these little tiny bits of the backing. If you're struggling to get backings off, then just, if you stick your thumbnail into the centre point of your foam, you should lift off the edges so that you can actually pick it up. Okay, longest bit to the bottom. Get it straight. There we go. Now, my congratulations. I'm going to put some double-sided tape in the middle. Like so. And a foam pad at either end, because it's going to be going over that centre panel. We're kind of bridging over the gap. There we go. And we'll go and get that centred, like so. Now, the reason that we don't go edge to edge is so that we can tuck in our flowers. So you have a couple of options. If you want to use some foam squares, you can do that, just to stick these in. But to be honest, you are probably better off at this point with some wet glue, which I know is on my desk somewhere. You gotta love it after a while when you've been working and suddenly where you thought things were isn't where things are. Okay, let me see if I can find my wet glue. Oh, if not, I will pause it. Okay, so let's clean off the end of my glue. And I'm going to turn my card upside down. And you want to start with your longest piece first. So probably one of these little leafy bits here. And I'm just going to pop a small amount of glue on the back. Now, as I said, I did have a bit of a blockage, so we'll see whether we can get it to come out. You know that list of tools that I said I couldn't find? One of them's my pokey tool for clearing out my glue. So, end up being resourceful, to say the least. Seriously, come on. Bear with me one moment, I'll be back in a second. Hopefully this will be seriously, I know I could feel air in it before. Come on. It is just not like in this bowl, I swear. Okay, so with my blockage cleared, let's give it a go. You want tiny, tiny, tiny amounts of glue, really. And then just spread it down. And you want to decide how big a little bouquet you want at the top. So I'm going to place this about here. Now let's say you didn't get your stencil quite lined up in the middle. It's quite a good way of visually adjusting where your centre is sitting at this point. Excuse me. And place this one down a little lower. So that's kind of the extent of our bouquet, so everything else is going to sit within that. And we're going to work on our next size stems. Okay, and that can, if it gets down as far as your little label here, just tuck it underneath, but I think that's probably going to go a little bit higher. Let's pop that there. Don't worry about your stem sticking up at this point, we're just going to concentrate on the flowers. Okay. So a little bit on our flower head here, and I want that to kind of come maybe slightly more that way, because I don't want to cover up too much of that stencil detail, so we can actually go there. Now I've got this little rosebud version here where I purposely cut a little bit of the flower away. And don't worry if your stems are a bit wobbly or perhaps a bit nicked, we can fix that. So I'm just going to pop that on around about there. Now let's just check my hook tool's nice and clean, because I'm going to need to use that. And we can actually, because we're using white glue, just give it a little tweak to get it where you need to. There's your first layer done. So now I'm going to use flower head here, and that I can pop just going into our section there. Just press and hold that for a moment, and it's going to keep our stems down. You can always apply a little bit more glue if need be, but for now that'll do. So now we have another blue, and I'm going to pop that going into there too, and there we go. One more. It is a bit weird designing bouquets upside down, but for the purposes of showing you slotting in, it's actually better for the camera this way up, so I'll work with it, it's fine. There we go. So we can see we've still got our stenciling popping through in places. Now I did cut out a couple of tiny little foliage pieces. So again, let's tuck that in there. And we can use these to just tidy up or add body wherever we need to. A bit more in there, and I'm going to pop this just underneath this flower here. Now let's get my little hooky tool. We can just pat that into place. There we go. And if you want to cut some more flowers at this point, you can do. But I think it's looking pretty good. And there we go. So, the last one that we haven't done yet is kind of focusing on the yellow tones. So, let's have a look at what we've done so far, and that might give us a pointer as to where to go next. we have our sort of aquamarine card, our kind of mix of all three, our more mauvey pinky card, and then let's see if we can do a yellow one. Now, in our pattern papers we don't really have a yellow, but the pink actually has a lot of yellow in it, so I'm going to work with that one. And let's pull out stencil and card blank. So let's go for this one here, and we can work with that kind of design in mind. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, let's turn my paper over, and we're going to create our squares. So I'm going to go for this big section here as one, and let's go over here for two. Yes, okay, I'm going to be wasting a bit of space, but sometimes it's just easier. And down here, whoop, that wobbled, so let's just hold that in place. There we go, for three. So hopefully you can see those, maybe not. Oh, it's going to go super duper dark on you now. Let's pause it. Okay, I think it might be too pale, but you can just see a hint there of where I've traced the shapes. So what I'm going to do is, let's cut these out. Okay. There we go. No, it's going to go too far. This is ridiculous. Have you ever had one of those days? It's just so changeable. Right, so there's our first panel. And you can create something similar with ScanNCut and the basic shapes if you want. It's just a bit easier if you already have it set up as a stencil when it comes to positioning it all. Okay, there's the next piece. Now what you could do is sketch the stencil onto your card blank to get your positioning. Okay, so there's our pieces there. Now let's pop these on here. So we have number 1. That was number 3. And then you can go up there for number 2. So what we can do, if you want to, is actually have 2 copies of the same stencil and have one as a hinge on to your card blank so that you can pop each piece in as you go. I'm just going to do this very roughly, so it's going to be something like that, so then I can work out my next piece. Let's go to my yellow card. And again, I'm going to work down into the corner. This time, I might go to a light blue actually, just to make it a little bit easier to see for you. So I'm going to go to this piece here. That piece there. And then this one up in the top corner. Like so. So you want to try and cut these out as kind of accurately as you can. So let's just roughly chop that out just to make life a little easier. When you're working on 12 by 12 card, it can be a bit awkward to get into these internal corners. So, especially when your cable's dangling for some reason. Okay, let's try and get my cable sorted. Otherwise I'm going to end up chopping me microphone cable, which isn't a good look. I think I might get told off. Right, so let's get that round there. So, well, this video is probably going to be about half an hour long. It's actually taken me quite a bit more than that. Okay, so that's the next one. Then we can just go diagonally across this one over here. And again, I'm just going to do that roughly and sort that out after. Sometimes it's easy and the card will behave. Other times it's just awkward. So let's get that out of the way. And then we can trim a little bit easier and keep those edges nice and straight. Okay, so there's the next one. Try to always remember once you cut these out to also turn them over so that you have good side facing up, so you don't accidentally stick them the wrong way up. Nothing worse than having spent the time doing all these little pieces to suddenly discover that actually you stuck one up the wrong way. So turn that one over and stencil. So that one there, that one there, that one in the middle. Then we had one that goes up here and it's not, let's see, that must be that one. and that one, and that one. Okay, so far so good. Now we've got a decision whether you're going to do the lilac-y stitched effect paper, or if you want to bring in a spot of the aquamarine. It all depends on what you have kind of left, really. Let's go for that one, because I think that might be a nice balance. So if we move this to one side, we need bottom square, little square, top corner. So now we can do a little bit moving about. So bottom square. Circle square, I'm not even bothering if these are straight or not. And top corner. There we go. And again, I'll cut that out. Okay, so now I've cut out these three. So again, we have that one, that one, that one goes there, that one goes that way up, that one goes that way, this one comes in here, this one goes there, and that one goes just like so in there. So this now leaves us two last panels. So what you can do is choose a third paper for this last one. One of my top tips for this would actually be is if you cut all the squares from each of the papers, then kind of mix them up, because otherwise it can be a bit difficult to try and get your layout right. It does really need another touch of yellow in there, so actually I'm going to bring that yellow back in. And it's this panel here, so let's just very quickly that one, like so. And just because I have this on my desk, I'm just going to do a yellow layer for this centre square as well. Whether it will stay like that is another thing entirely. It might be that I keep it as a blank, but if I do it while I'm here, can't accidentally forget. I'll either work or it won't. And the reason that I'm thinking of filling all the squares, because you don't have to fill all the squares, is I want to add a little bit of like faux stitching detail in between these panels, so it kind of looks a bit like it's quilted. So you could do that if you have a stitching stamp. If you have some stitching rub-ons, you could use those. Or if, like me, you can't find anything, you can just use a fine liner or a ruler. Okay, so I've cut out my pieces and I've done a layout, and I'm just deciding whether I want to just swap out a couple of the pieces, because what I could do is swap out these two panels here for a slightly different lemony shade, so that could kind of pop a little bit more. But it's one of those. I'm indecisive, but now I'm not sure. So the other thing is our best wishes. We could actually change that to more of a shape panel if we wanted to. So if we go back to the stamps away, we might use that to create more of a shape panel. But I think just for proportion wise, for this one I'm just going to probably trim it down a bit so that it feels a bit more nested. Okay, so first things first though, I want to stick all of these pieces to my card front. So let's bring my card and let's check it's up the right way. I'm going to position my stencil into the centre. Let's get a little bit of my masking tape. Now I want to create a hinge, so let's go there. Okay. Now if you think that's not going to be quite enough to hold it stable, let's put a bit more. You want it so that you can lift it easily, because we're going to be popping these bits back through our stencil to stick them down. Now we can use tape to do that. That is absolutely fine. We can use wet glue, so whichever way works for you. I'm going to use the very smidging of glue. Now I do like that particular applicator just because you can apply glue without applying too much glue. You're going to line up your shape and just pop it through your stencil. Okay, so you can see why that hinge is so important now. Next shape. Use the teeth of your glue applicator to help you out. Level, lift up the stencil. That's just so that we don't get the stencil stuck to our card. So, there we go. Another little smidgen of glue. Line it up. And give it a lift and back down. From here on in it's a lot easier, so always start with that hinge end first. Okay, next bit. With that bit. Now, next line. Good news is with the card pieces we don't have to worry quite so much about how much or how little glue we're applying. I'm just going to use my other end just to kind of spread that out a little bit. With the smaller space it's a little bit more difficult to work with, but more into this bottom section. It's a bit like tiling. Again, if you're doing this at home, you don't need to be quite so quick. Just take your time. Okay. Now what I would say is, before you do any kind of stitching detail or inking, you want to make sure that all this is fully set and dry. I'm going to press all that down so that it's nice and flat. There we go. So we now have our grid in place, and if I show you just here, you can see that's all done. Okay. Now, onto our little sentiments. I'm looking at doing best wishes. Now I could just pop this up 3D'd and just leave it like that. I can chop it down and nest it on layers, but I think just to bring in a little bit more of that pink, we could pop it onto some of that pink background. And let's go down to this space here. Double-sided tape in front of you, Natty. There we go. Just because we want to be able to cut this out and move it round without waiting for it to dry, I'm going to just double-sided tape it. Now decide where we want to go. Down to this bottom edge here, looks good. There we go, and we can just trim that off. That will be job done. Does mean that it's going to chop off that top bit here, but that's fine. We can always use that for another grid base card. And that'll do. Keep going to put stuff on the floor and I can't do it here. I have to be good. Okay. Maybe a little bit off the top and sides. Just to even it up a little bit. Come on. You know you want to. Let's just get me hooky tool and just, there we go. Sometimes it's easy to put these things in from the right hand side, and I just want to get it level. There we go. Smudge off the top. Sides are going to be easier. It just feels a little bit better in terms of spacing and things. So we can go and line that up over the top. And I think when that's 3D'd up, that is all that is needed for that card, really. So then it's just a case of stitching. So before we stick on our sentiment, you have a decision to make as to which pen you want to stitch with. So if I bring all these back in, we've got our darker greeny colour, which is more turquoisey, a kind of aquamarine pale blue, our dusky pink bordering on mauve, and our lemon. So let's go to our pink actually. And we could do this all nice and neatly with a nice little ruler if you want to. Yeah, I'm looking at my desk going, yes, but no, I'll do this by hand. Is this going to be the most even stitching in the world? No. Does it matter? No. So we have our first stitching. The light is definitely giving me trouble today. I'm going to do some pink stitching down here. You don't have to do all your stitching in one colour. So let's go there, and I'm going to do some pink up here. There we go. Now the yellow is going to be quite subtle. I'm also not going to do too much of it. Okay. Now, mainly because I'm not sure that they're going to go. Have I got anything in the other pens? Probably a pinky tone there, that might be okay. Let's try the pink. It's a shame there isn't like a sort of bluey grey. But that will do. Just to finish this off. There we go. I'm going to go down here. We can do a little bit up here. There we go. And if you want to go around the outside, you can do. But I think that is probably more than enough. And then let's pop that up on some 3D foam, and we'll say that's it, job done. And we'll take off all these little excuse my head if I pop into the shop. I'm just going to go. And there we go. Let's move those out of the way. I'm going to reset my desk, make it nice and tidy, and when it comes back, nice pretty end shot. And there you have it, our 4 cards that we've made today. So we have our first card where we use the ScanNCut to create our topper panel. We had our that card next. I forgot which order I did it myself then. So we had this card next, where we did the cutaway panel. We had our slimline card, where we fussy cut our flowers to create our decorative piece. And finally we have our quilted card. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I look forward to seeing you next month for another vlog hop. In the meantime, do keep an eye out for notifications of when I go live and any other videos that I create. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.